You fool! Warren is dead. Welcome to HorrorBabble. We're back again with another November remaster today. The Silver Knife by Ralph Lang. The story of a man pursued by a wolf across the polar wastes of the far north. This one will form the basis of our new Werewolves playlist. All categorized playlists can be accessed via the main channel page. We hope you enjoy this one, folks. The Silver Knife by Ralph Allen Lang. When Ross Nagel returned in less than a fortnight from his first manhunt in the uniform of a Northwest mounted policeman, it was a matter of surprise to all who witnessed his return to barracks. It was not that anyone doubted his ability, for he came to the Mounties with an enviable service record in His Majesty's troops in the Far East. The surprise was due to the fact that he had been assigned to the trail of Wolf Dahlgren, a veritable wolf of the north, whose familiar ground constituted no less than 1,000 square miles of frozen waste. Still more surprise was the post commander when Nagel, in making his report, laid before him a package containing 2 curious articles. The first of these was well calculated to inspire the astonishment with which the inspector regarded it. It was a knife of falchion shape, with a wicked curve at the point that suggested the purpose for which it had originally been made, a sacrificial knife. In the eyes of the inspector, this impression was further confirmed by the material of which it was made, beaten silver, and by the pair of great twin rubies that ornamented the hilt. He had once seen a knife almost exactly similar to it while attached as guard to an expedition excavating the ruins of an ancient temple of Dagon. But what could such a knife, with its priceless inset gems, be doing here in the Arctic wastes of North America? Only one explanation presented itself to the puzzled mind of the inspector, that it had been brought by an immigrating Old World tribe in some dim period of history when the continents were still connected by a strip of land. A remnant of this tribe might conceivably still exist in the unexplored regions of the north, the sacred knife having been handed down from generation to generation. How had Wolf Dahlgren gained possession of it while under pursuit by the Mounties on a murder charge? He turned his attention to the other article on the desk, a small, leather-bound notebook, in hopes that it might furnish an explanation. It was in good condition, except for bloodstains on the cover, legibly written, and the inspector leaned back to read. The first entry was dated 2 weeks previously. December 3rd. With this entry I begin another diary, one of a long series, written to be destroyed, that have solaced the loneliness of 3 years spent on Arctic trails. It is lonely here in camp tonight, with the nearest white settlement 200 miles away, and a hard day's trailing from the native village where I passed the last week. If luck stays with me, this will be my last trek through this bitter, accursed country, and luck at last is coming my way. After 3 years of freezing, starving, and murdering miserable creatures for contemptible amounts, luck puts me in possession of a treasure more valuable than any gold mine in the north. The simple Indian fools who use the silver knife in their sacrificial service could have no idea of the value of the great rubies in its hilt. To them, it is merely a religious relic handed down from long-forgotten ancestors. To me, it is freedom, life, luxury, the silver key of desire. It is right and just that I should have the knife, who have so much better use for it than any old sachem ever put it to. They will not have missed it until twilight tonight, and no Indians will cover as much trail in 2 days as the one I have left behind me today. In less than 2 weeks, I will hit the seacoast, then for a ship to the States, and the Mounties can have their north. December 4th. Another good day's trailing, bettering perhaps the distance made yesterday. Nothing of interest has occurred, and I have seen no living thing except a skulking timber wolf. It is remarkable in that it is the largest I have ever seen, a great, shaggy brute standing inches higher than any of my huskies, and it seems to be following me. Doubtless it is beginning to feel the pinch of winter hunger. December 5th. An astounding thing occurred last night, unparalleled in all of my experience in the north. An attack by a wolf or wolves on a camp protected by an open fire. It was well after midnight, and due to the fact that I was sleeping more soundly than usual, the fire had subsided almost into a bed of coals when I was jarred awake by a sharp yelp from the dogs, followed by the snarling fury of a fight. It could not be called a fight either, for the wolf or wolves were gone again into the night as swiftly as they had come, and I had only a brief glimpse of one shaggy giant as he faded into the obscurity of the darkness. But brief as the engagement was, its effect was devastating to my team, the lead dog having been literally torn to ribbons and another slashed on the shoulder. As a consequence, I was able to make but poor time today, and I had trouble constantly with the dogs, so demoralized is their condition. What puzzles me is that the attackers seem to make no effort to obtain food, but I suppose that my awakening frightened them away. I have seen the lone wolf several times today, dogging my trail at an uncomfortably close distance. On one occasion, I was close enough to see his devilish fangs as he stood and snarled his hatred. 2 clear shots I had at him before he retreated, and I am unable to explain how I could have missed him. I have seen no other wolves at any time, and am almost forced to believe that it was he alone who made the attack last night, although it seems impossible that one wolf could wreak such havoc. Tonight, I will keep a sharp watch to prevent a repetition of it. December 6th. The wolf was back last night, and despite all of my precautions, took toll of another of my dogs. I was sleeping lightly with my rifle at the ready, and was up at the first sound, getting my first close sight of him as he raised his bloody fangs from the husky's throat and turned to face me. He must have stood nearly 3 feet high, but it was the ghoulish fury in his yellow eyes that unnerved me more than his great stature. I fired point blank at the hideous head, but still he stood there, fixing me with that baleful glare, and it was not until the pack closed in on his flank that he turned and loped away. 3 dogs only are left of my original 5, and these are so demoralized with terror that I can make but poor headway. I, too, own myself a victim of intense nervousness, and am weighted down by an uncanny, unreasonable feeling of dread. If I were more susceptible to superstitious beliefs, I might find myself imagining all sorts of weird explanations of my failure to drop him at point blank with a rifle that has brought down moose. As it is, though I take no stock in werewolf tales, my mental condition is such that I would not be above trying a silver bullet on him if I had one, merely to relieve my nerves. December 7th. The thing was back again last night, but this time he appeared in a different manner. He is bold now, and appeared as soon as dusk had fallen, skulking in the shadows just outside the circle of firelight. 3 hours I sat there under the spell of those hellish yellow eyes, now appearing on one side of the circle, now on the other, compelling me frequently to change my position in order to watch him. I fired again and again with no result except that the eyes moved to another position. Then it happened. Before I knew what had occurred, I was pouring shot after shot into the charging beast, until the hammer clicked on an empty chamber. He was so close that the hateful eyes seemed burning through my brain, and in desperate agony I grasped the only weapon my hand fell upon, the silver knife. What happened then I do not clearly know, but he swerved away from me, and in some unexplainable way I sensed fear in his snarl. Then he was among the dogs, ripping and slashing, and a third victim was torn to ribbons. My nerve is shattered, and I scarcely know what to believe. Bullets have no effect on the thing, and I am here in the wilderness 100 miles from civilization, with no protection against him. I have one hope, founded on the manner in which he avoided me last night. For some reason he fears me, although I am absolutely helpless before him. My only hope now is to push on to the coast with the 2 dogs I have left, praying that these 2 may not fall victims before I reach there. December 8th. I am writing this now not to dispel loneliness or even nervousness, but in sheer terror, and to take my mind off the horror that is prowling outside. It may be the last page of this ghastly tale, for the thing has grown desperate now, and apparently has submerged its fear of me in the greater fear of my reaching civilization and escaping it. Since early morning I have pushed forward at a killing pace, with the thing growing steadily in confidence or in desperation, and drawing closer to me with every mile. At noon I reached this abandoned miner's cabin, and was able to gain its shelter in just the nick of time. The thing evidently can think, for at sight of the cabin it threw all caution to the winds and charged, straining me to the utmost to reach the door, and forcing me to abandon the dogs. Their cries were pitiful, for so greatly had the terror grown upon them that they did not even try to fight. Watching from a small high window on the north side of the cabin, I was sickened at the savage rending of their bodies, and at the ghastly aspect of its bloody snout as it raised its head and gave vent to a blood-chilling howl, the first sound I have heard it utter. I cannot describe the nightmare of horror that closed down on my brain as it rang through the silence, and which has left me completely unmanned. It was minutes before I could pull myself together enough to make a search of the cabin for any means of defense, and then at last luck smiled and gave me a glimmer of hope. Among a collection of useless odds and ends left by the miners, I found an old bullet mold, and the thought has come to me that I may be able to melt enough silver from the knife to run a bullet. Weird and ridiculous as the idea seems, I'm convinced that the thing outside can be nothing else than a werewolf, and my only hope is to try a silver bullet, to which alone they are said to be vulnerable. I have pried all of the loose wood obtainable off of the studding, and wait now for the fire to burn into coals hot enough to melt the silver. It is almost ready, and I stop now to break a piece from the guard of the knife. All hope of killing the thing is now gone. The wood I have is too dry and lifeless to make a fire hot enough to melt the silver. I must play a waiting game now, for as long as the provisions in my shoulder knapsack hold out, I am safe. In its wolf form, the thing cannot open the door, although I have no way of barring it, and if it assumes human shape, I will kill it with a bullet. It is whining now, and scratching against the wall in an effort to rear up high enough to look in the window. Now it is padding back and forth, before the door, trying doubtless to work up courage to assume its human form, and there now is a hand on the latch. It has been 3 minutes now since the latch was raised. Fear is doubtless holding him back. At any moment he may conquer it, but I am ready. Hounds of hell! Can it be possible that he is changing back into a wolf again? There was a strange look on Inspector Moore's face as he raised his eyes in a questioning glance to the face of the constable, who still waited. "Just how did you come into possession of these?" he asked. Nagel's face showed plainly that he too had perused the contents of the diary. "I found them in an abandoned miner's cabin beyond Bitter Creek," he answered slowly. "Wolf Dahlgren was in there, dead, his throat torn as though by the fangs of a wolf. I found this diary on the table beside him. There was another corpse in there, too, a wrinkled old Indian whose weird ceremonial garb marked him as some kind of medicine man or sachem. It was in his breast that I found the silver knife." If you enjoyed listening today, be sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting the red subscribe button below. After doing so, click the bell icon next to the subscribe button to receive new content notifications. If you'd like to support our work and receive exclusive perks, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the Join button below. To support us in other ways, see the video description for links to our Bandcamp and Patreon pages, our merch store over at Teespring, and further information relating to our releases on Audible, iTunes, and Spotify. And until next time,